Part 3. Back to the main plot of Picard talking to the new Watcher, which is played by Laris, which was never explained why it's her. And then it's revealed that what Q did to change the timeline was manipulate Rene Picard, which was actually mentioned in the first episode of the season as well. When Picard was making that speech in the Academy, he told the audience about his great uncle Rene, who was one of the first astronauts to explore the solar system. And I remember when I saw that episode, I just thought it's a cute reference to his nephew Rene, which was obviously named after that great cousin. The only issue I had with that is that I wonder why did Picard's brother named his son after that famous astronaut when he was so much against space travel. He kept telling Picard not to encourage his son's curiosity about space and all of that, so he kept being angry at Picard for encouraging his son Rene. And I kept thinking, so why did he name his son after a famous astronaut if he didn't want his son to be interested in spaceflight? And so that kind of bugs me a little bit as well. And Picard obviously knew about Rene when he was making that speech, and yet in this episode he's apparently completely oblivious about her. He has to ask this Watcher woman to tell him about her, about Rene. And then she starts telling him all about Rene, and then we have a ridiculous bit of dialogue when she starts telling him about Rene, and she taught herself how to sail a boat around the planet at age 10. And then she was a champion at chess at the age 11, and then at age 12 she knew Chinese, and at age 13 she finished university, and at age 14 she was the test pilot for NASA, and so on and on and on, and it was so ridiculous. It really reminds me of Star Trek Discovery with Michael Burnham, the Mary Sue, who is the best at absolutely everything. She has the #1 record at absolutely every single thing in existence. She's the best pilot, she's the best scientist, she's the most compassionate person ever, and so on and so on. And so I had flashbacks of Discovery when watching this scene of this woman praising Rene, even though she never met her, but saying she's the most amazing woman ever, the cleverest woman ever, the key to everything. She's the key to the future, to the past, and everything. She's the reason why humanity became the Federation in the future. Without her, there would be no Federation. So it wasn't really about Zefram Cochrane, who invented the first warp engine and who met aliens for the first time, and that united all of humanity and all of that. No, it wasn't really about that. It was actually about Rene Picard, who found some intelligent microbe in the solar system and brought it back, and that's what really changed humanity, I guess. And so nothing makes any sense, so they're basically retconning First Contact now, and it's really strange because this episode was directed by Jonathan Frakes, who made First Contact, so how come he doesn't remember the movie that he made? How come he doesn't remember that the Borg Queen is a lot harder to kill than just one shotgun bullet? Doesn't he remember how he made all the special effects, that the Borg Queen was only a skeleton robot which was still alive even after every single organic cell in her body was destroyed by warp plasma? But now she's easily killable by one bullet, and so Jonathan Frakes lost his memory as well, just like all the other actors apparently. And it's also funny that the previous 2 episodes were directed by Leah Thompson. That's the woman who played Lorraine in the Back to the Future movies, and so I guess they hired her because they thought she knows something about time travel, and maybe that's why they brought her to direct these episodes about time travel, but then it's all a mess, nothing makes any sense. And she even has a cameo in this episode. She plays the woman who is the leader of that committee who bans Dr. Soong from pursuing his genetic research because he did some illegal experiments on soldiers or something like that. And when I saw that scene, I was also facepalming because why didn't they simply say it's because of the eugenics wars, which were supposed to have taken place in the 1990s, so this is set after it. So all they had to do was say that his research is banned because of the eugenics wars. That's why genetic engineering is outlawed, and he will disagree with that because he has the daughter which is terminally ill because of a genetic illness. And so then things would have made sense, things would have tied together, but the writers apparently forgot all about the eugenics wars, and so it was never mentioned once, even though they had the perfect setup for it. So that was also very disappointing. Now granted, the whole issue of the eugenics wars continuity-wise was always a mess, because back in TOS they said the whole eugenics wars was basically the Third World War, and yet in First Contact they said the war took place somewhere in 2050s. 10 years before First Contact, and so they kind of retconned that, I guess. So I guess we can say that maybe the eugenics wars haven't happened yet in the new timeline, even though in Star Trek Enterprise they did mention that it happened in the 20th century and killed only 30 million people and not the 600 million that died in the 2050s war. So it's all kind of a mess continuity-wise. At least there was a line by Picard somewhere in the episode when he said that the historical records of this time period are all messy, and so I guess that's a neat excuse to explain away those continuity errors of people not knowing exactly when that war took place. So I think it was a missed opportunity not to tie it with that, because they had a perfect setup. All they had to say was that they found out that this scientist, Dr. Soong, is doing genetic research which is illegal because of the eugenics war stuff, because of what happened with Khan, who got exiled out into space, and they even had that whole setup of spaceships that are able to fly far out into the solar system. They set it up in this season, they showed it, the whole plot with Rene flying to Jupiter's moon, Europa, and all of that. That's a perfect way to say that Star Trek's timeline is not the same as our own in reality, and so they do have those kinds of spaceships which are able to take people far out into space, just like Khan's ship, on which he was exiled, and so why not tie it together when they have the perfect setup for it anyway? So anyway, we see Rene Picard in a simulator training for her mission, but she gets nervous and she cannot complete the test, and then the operators tell her it's alright, it's just jitters, and then we see her going to a therapist, and despite being so brilliant and such an overachiever, and completing all those amazing things so early in life, she still has emotional problems, she has anxiety, she has melancholy, she has depression, she's too emotional and all of that. And that also reminds me of Michael Burnham, which is, despite being so brilliant, she had to cry in every single episode because she's so compassionate, she's so over emotional, even though she was raised on Vulcan by Vulcans and was mastering her emotions, but suddenly after being in Star Trek Discovery, she began to cry in every single episode. So this astronaut, Rene Picard, who is such a brilliant mind, and that's why NASA wanted her so bad, but she has emotional problems and anxiety and depression and is thinking about suicide, and she tells all of that to the official psychiatrist of NASA. And despite that, she's still on the mission. She's still supposed to lead the mission, despite being open about it to the official NASA therapist. And all of this really reminds me of Star Trek Discovery, with characters such as Tilly, who is a nervous wreck with emotional problems and so on, and yet she's allowed to command the ship on more than one occasion, and it's totally fine. And so the same thing here with Rene Picard, who is supposed to be leading a mission in NASA, and yet they know that she has emotional problems. They see it in the simulator that she has anxiety attacks and is unable to complete the simulation, and she tells all of her problems to her official NASA psychiatrist, and then NASA says, oh, it will be fine. She has emotional problems and anxiety attacks and depression and is a little bit suicidal sometimes, but I'm sure it will be fine. I'm sure we can allow her to take this most important mission ever into the solar system because we have no other candidates. She's simply the smartest woman ever in history, so we should let her be in charge of this mission despite all of these problems. And so all of this stuff is stupid as hell. And then when we see the psychiatrist from the back, I immediately knew it's going to be Q, because I can kind of recognize him from the shape of his head and his voice, even though he's doing like a bad German accent, trying to sound like Sigmund Freud, I guess. But it was obviously him from the beginning. But Picard doesn't immediately recognize him, and somehow this Watcher is able to have all this footage of their private therapy sessions, and Picard says, oh, but it's wrong to spy on private therapy sessions. And I'm thinking, you're on a mission to save all of humanity. Do you remember that? Why are you so concerned about her privacy right now? And so that was also ridiculous. And so then he notices that the psychiatrist basically encourages her to quit the mission and so on. So he realizes something is off. Why is he talking her out of it? But isn't he supposed to be the official therapist of NASA? So why wouldn't he think about the mission first and her feelings second? So none of this makes any sense. Then he asks her, please zoom on the doctor, and then she zooms on, and then, oh, it's Q who is doing all of this. So I guess maybe they will reveal that Q was the one who was causing her all the anxiety problems. Maybe he was doing all of that from the get-go. Maybe that's why she has all these problems. Maybe it's Q doing it to change the timeline. And it's never explained why exactly is Q doing any of this. When the season first started, I assumed that Q is not actually going to be the main villain, that maybe he's actually helping Picard to save the timeline. I mean, that's why he brought him into the alternate timeline from the first place, to show him what went wrong. And he not only brought him, but also his new crew. He brought all of them over to the new reality so that they can go on this mission to save the past. And so it's obviously Q allowing them the chance to save the future. So he could not be the evil villain that he's trying to ruin everything. He obviously gives Picard the chance to correct things. And so I assume there's going to be another villain who actually caused the change in the past, but now it's shown to us, no, it's actually Q himself personally who caused all of this mess. So why would he do it at all? I guess he went crazy. I guess he has some kind of Q disease, which also made him lose his powers, which prevents him from being too overpowered as a villain. But if it's all a game to him anyway, so why not have him keep his powers and simply limiting himself? So none of this makes any sense. Why didn't he simply kill Rene Picard? Why play all these psychological games with her to try to make her quit being an astronaut? Like, none of this makes any sense if you really think about it. And then because Q lost his powers, that's why he needs the help of Dr. Soong. And so that's why he approaches Adam Soong, who is a geneticist whose daughter has a genetic illness, and his daughter is played by the same actress who played Soji in season 1. I guess maybe because he loved his daughter so much, maybe he implanted the memories of her into every one of his clones, and that's the only way I can possibly explain why every single man in the Soong family looks exactly like Brent Spiner for centuries and centuries. The only way to explain that is to reveal later on that he will actually be cloning himself to live forever, maybe because he knows he cannot have biological children because they will have this genetic illness, and that's why instead he will simply clone himself, maybe keeping all his memories and maybe eventually implanting some of his memories into Data, and maybe that's why her face will be the face of Soji in the future. I guess that's the convoluted way to try to explain why did she look the way she did in the future. It cannot be some random choice of appearance that Data designed in his mind, and then Maddox took that design and made Soji and her sister to look like that. And so their convoluted excuse, I guess, is that it's because his great grandfather who looks exactly like him, which I guess was a clone of him. Otherwise there's no way to explain the appearance similarity of all the Soongs. So his ancestor was a geneticist who, I guess, I'm hoping it will be revealed that at some point he will decide to clone himself for eternity until he builds androids who will look like him as well. I guess he has a massive ego. And he started all of that because he wanted to save his daughter so badly. Because his daughter has a made-up genetic illness which makes her unable to go outside. So she lives in a sealed room, which really reminds me of Blade Runner 2, which also had a character like that, a woman who has to spend her whole life in isolation behind glass because she has a weak immune system or something. So I guess they stole it from there or got inspired by it. So Dr. Soong's daughter is unable to go outside because she has a made-up illness that turns her blood into poison if she's exposed to the air or the light or something. And I'm wondering if this part was written by Alex Kurtzman himself, because I seem to remember in that movie The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which he also made, there was that bit about that genetic illness in the Osborn family which turned them into green goblins. And also this whole bit with the daughter reminds me of those scenes in Into Darkness when Khan was giving his magic blood to some guy whose daughter was sick with something, and to get that guy's help, Khan gave him his magic blood to cure his daughter so that that guy will agree to help him blow up Starfleet headquarters or something. So there's even a mention of Into Darkness in the dialogue itself. When Dr. Soong comes in to meet his daughter, he said something about Into Darkness, and so there's a lot of dialogue in this season with all kinds of episode names inserted in an awkward way, and so they keep kind of inserting all these references in the dialogue itself to movie names and episode names, and so it's kind of silly how he actually said Into Darkness in the dialogue itself. And his daughter is sick with a genetic illness which is about to kill her, and that's why Q gives him that little vial with the cure so that he can help him do something later on. So it's just like in Into Darkness, and similar to that Blade Runner story about that daughter of Harrison Ford who was stuck in a glass room for eternity because she also has a genetic illness, because she's half synthetic or something. And so similarly here, Soji, or whatever she's called now, has a genetic condition that she's unable to go outside, and she keeps saying how much she wants to go and learn swimming in a pool. And I keep thinking, why cannot she simply go out at night? Because later on they show that she can actually go outside, but she needs to have that force field protecting her from the sun's UV rays. So apparently Dr. Soong invented a force field way back in 2024. He already had flying drones that can create a force field to protect people from the sunlight. And it's really funny because I remember in the teasers for this episode when we saw that bit with the drones creating the force fields, people thought it's going to be the Tholians with the Tholian web, because it looks very similar to that. And so people thought, oh, the Tholians must have technology which is able to make them detect time travel. That's why they came to Earth in this century, just like they did in that episode of Enterprise when they detected the time pod from the future. And so it's going to be the Tholians and all of that. And now it's revealed to be just silly drones that Dr. Soong invented, that they are able to create a force field to protect Soji, or whatever her name is, from the sunlight so she can go and swim. And I keep thinking, why cannot she simply swim at night time when there is no sun? What's the big deal? And she said earlier that she wants to learn how to swim, and yet after he gives her the cure, she jumps into the water and swims expertly without any problems. And so why did she say earlier that she wants to learn how to swim if she already knows how to swim in this scene? So did she learn in 1 second? Did she read books about swimming? That's how she knows how to swim. And then her disease starts manifesting and she has veins all over her face and all of that, and he has to turn the force field back on to prevent her from dying. And that also made me facepalm, because why couldn't they simply make her an albino or something? Instead of inventing this made-up, convoluted, green goblinism disease, why not simply make her a super albino or something like that, which could have actually been a clever reference to Data as well. Why not make her appear super white with makeup as if she's an albino? Maybe that could even explain why Dr. Soong made his android children look like albinos. Maybe because it's of his love for his ancient daughter from centuries ago who was an albino, and he loved her so dearly that when he made his android children, he made them albinos as well, because of his love for his albino child, which started him off on this journey of cloning himself to fix all of humanity's problems, and then eventually deciding to just make androids instead, and then made them albinos in memory of his beloved daughter who was an albino. And that's why he wanted to find a cure for her, so that she'll be able to go out swimming in the sunlight. So that's another missed opportunity in my opinion. They could have made Soji look totally white like Data. That will make her more similar to Data as well. So another missed opportunity. To be continued.